5 favourite books in ToK. Hi guys, welcome back to ToK today. Today we're going to look at 5 favourite books in ToK, but before we do that, let me just say that likes are very much appreciated and subscriptions are even more appreciated. I've seen this a lot on social media, that what books are good for ToK. So I thought I would look at what are my 5 favourite books in ToK. But let's first set some criteria, because we're ToK students. So number 1, the book has to develop ToK-like thinking. Number 2, it has to be accessible to all the students in the class. Number 3, it has to be interesting to read, fun, it has to have a narrative. So obviously we're not talking about ToK textbooks here. I don't use a ToK textbook, I've never used a textbook. Not sure why anyone would need a ToK textbook. So there are lots and lots of books that I could choose from. So these are the 5 favourite ones for today, but I'll probably have a different 5 in the future. So let's get into it. Number 5. Number 5 is The Honest Truth About Dishonesty by Dan Ariely. Dan Ariely is a behavioural economist at Duke University in the US, and in this book he explores the nature of dishonesty and therefore the nature of honesty, and therefore it sort of leads on to the nature of truth as well. And he does this using loads of really fun little experiments with the students in his course, in his behavioural economics course, and you could do some of his experiments with your students. I've done some of them with mine. So he asks questions like, to what extent is dishonesty universal? What's the function of dishonesty? Are honesty and dishonesty necessarily immutable? Is truth the same as honesty? And he sort of goes into lots of these different questions. So what's this got to do with ToK? Well, the direct links with ToK are, he questions the nature of truth, he looks at multiple and parallel truths, he obviously looks at objectivity, reliability and validity, and he looks at how truth is a socially constructed phenomenon. And that's a pretty mind-blowing idea for students when they come into ToK. Let's move on to number 4 on our list. Number 4 on the list is Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow by Yuval Noah Harari. Yuval Noah Harari is a professor of history at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and his first book, Homo Sapiens, is far better known than Homo Deus. Homo Sapiens is a very good book, and it has some relevance to ToK, and it's certainly worth reading, but I think that Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow is more pertinent for ToK, and not just for the technology section of the course, but for the whole course. So the book is about how new technologies will impact society, or already are impacting society at the moment. Technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, augmented reality, and so on. Okay. But what makes this book different to all the other books which are out about that at the moment is that this book focuses on how the interaction between technology and humans leads to new knowledge, and it leads to new ways of understanding ourselves as knowledge beings or knowledge producers, or the knower. So it looks at that sort of intersection between humans and technology, and how the technology changes us so that we then produce different types of knowledge in the future, or at the moment. It considers how artificial intelligence will change our personal, social, economic and political lives in unpredictable ways and unforeseen ways, and the unpredictable knowledge that we're going to produce because of that. Unpredictability is a good segue into the 3rd book on our list. The 3rd book on our list is The Black Swan, The Impact of the Highly Improbable by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Nassim Taleb is a mathematician, a writer, a former bond trader on Wall Street. And The Black Swan is a book about the impact of highly improbable events such as 9/11 or Hurricane Katrina. And it looks at how those highly improbable events change our knowledge world very quickly in an unexpected and unpredictable way, because we seek out narratives which can explain those events. So what's this got to do with ToK? Well, it shows the link between the real world and the constructed world, or the physical world and the constructed world, and how the constructed world can change very quickly in an unpredictable way when the real world changes quickly. It helps us to question that cliched aphorism that we learn from our past, something that the students often bring into ToK, deciding that we learn from our past. And it sort of says, well, you know, if our future's unpredictable, how can we learn from our past? There are things which just have never happened before, certainly not in the context that they happen in the future. And we maybe don't have the models to deal with those unpredictable events. And it helps us to question the probability-based knowledge frameworks of subjects such as mathematics, or area of knowledge, maths, and human sciences, and natural sciences. So that's something that's quite difficult for the students to do, which this book really starts to unpack. If you have students in your class who are maybe less interested in ToK, or they don't necessarily see the point of ToK, then this is a good book for showing them how ToK has direct relevance in the world. Nassim Nicholas Taleb used philosophical models of unpredictability in his stock market trading to make lots and lots of money. If you have students who are only interested in making lots of money, then this book is really good to say to them, look, this guy used ToK in his stock market trading and he made a lot of money. But students who are more interested in sort of mathematical subjects, engineering, sciences, that type of thing. And Nassim Taleb is a writer who joins those two areas together, and I often direct those students towards the Black Swan for this very reason. Okay, moving on to book number 2, and this is a controversial choice, I know. So book number 2 is Infidel My Life by Ayaan Hirsi Ali. I understand that this book cannot be used in all the locations that ToK is taught in, but if you are able to use this book, it's a highly powerful book about how our knowledge world is totally constructed and plausible. Ayaan Hirsi Ali was born in Somalia in 1969, and she variously lived there and in Kenya and in Ethiopia before she arrived in the Netherlands in 1992. Upon arriving in the Netherlands, she didn't speak any Dutch, but she quickly taught herself Dutch, and she went to college and learned Dutch. And she learned Dutch to such a good level that she achieved she was given a place on the very selective Masters in Political Science course at Leiden University, where she graduated in the year 2000. But that wasn't enough for Ayaan Hirsi Ali. She carried on working, and she got herself elected to the Dutch Parliament in 2003. So only 11 years after arriving in the Netherlands, not speaking any Dutch, she's managed to get herself elected to the Dutch Parliament, which is just incredibly impressive, and that alone would be worthy of a book. However, that's not her whole story. As a campaigner for women's rights and for Muslim women's rights particularly, Ayaan Hirsi Ali has made a number of films and written a number of books, and in her journey from Somalia to the Netherlands, she's really questioned the taken for granted assumptions that she had as she was growing up. She questions her culture, her religion, her identity, and in many ways demonstrates the constructed nature of our reality. So what has this book got to do with ToK? It's a wonderfully rich and vivid description of how someone's knowledge world is constructed, of how our whole understanding of ourselves and our world around us are constructed based on taken for granted assumptions. And in her description of her transition from one world to another, we start to see how all-encompassing those taken for granted assumptions are. The book is an exemplification of the core theme, knowledge and the knower. And it's an enthralling account of how communities of knowers weave together values, culture, identity, perspectives, and how convincing they are, how real they are to us as humans. For me, it brings to mind the saying, "What is water?" which is a David Foster Wallace reference. And if you don't know who David Foster Wallace is or the reference, then I'll come to that in a later video. It's good ToK. Anyway, swiftly moving to the top of our list for book number 1. And book number 1 on our list is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I think that's how you say it, Exupéry. Most of you will know this book, and yes, it's a children's book. And yes, it doesn't have direct reference to ToK stuff like themes and areas of knowledge. And yes, it doesn't have any academic sources quoted in it. And yes, it's slightly an esoteric book. But I honestly believe that this beautiful little book is one of the greatest works of philosophy written in the 20th century. And I do think it is of direct relevance to ToK. So I'm not going to tell you the story of The Little Prince, because if you haven't read it, then obviously I recommend it. It's a very short book. You can read it in an hour or two, and it's a beautifully written and beautifully illustrated book. But I will tell you a little bit about what I think it has to do with ToK and why all ToK students and teachers should read it. So these are my interpretations of some of the key questions in the book, or the key messages in the book. The Little Prince deals with how we decide what is important, and then how we attach values and labels to the things that we decide are important. And in itself, that's a very powerful message, that we've decided that this thing is important over that thing. Okay, and the reasons why we have, and then the values that we attach to that we say is important. The book explores what the relationship is between the knower and their constructed knowledge world, and then whether we have any autonomous thought within our constructed knowledge world. So how reliable is that constructed knowledge world, and what function does the knowledge world that we construct have? We're getting into heavy stuff here, and it's just a little story, but it's great. It also looks at the role of authority in our constructed knowledge world, institutional and personal and individual authority, and the role that has in shaping our knowledge world. It also looks at the interplay between the empirical world and the rational mind, and the role that interaction has in constructing meaningful belief and reality, with particular reference to the role of emotion, function, purpose, and preconceived schemas. And there are many, many other interpretations of this beautiful little book. The important point is that Antoine de Saint-Exupéry does all of this with this beautiful little tale of just this, of a pilot of a crashed plane and a little boy, the prince, going on a journey together and experiencing the world together. It's beguiling. It's just fascinating the more you read it. I can't recommend it strongly enough. So that's it. That's my 5 favourite ToK books that are going to develop ToK thinking. ToK students and ToK teachers can read today to unpack aspects of the course and bring the course alive. Let me know in the comments section what your favourite ToK books are and why. And I'll come back to you with more books in the future. A reminder, likes are wonderful novels and subscriptions are like bookshelves of wisdom. Have a great day, stay ToKtastic, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye.